much, Lida Auke, and to the CHE of Netherlands. And thank you all very much for this attendance. It's as we were discussing yesterday with Auke, this is such a daunting task, especially when it comes to Turkey, to try to summarize anything about it all. We've been going through some turbulent times, and next month, on the 14th of May, we're going to be heading towards an election for the election of the president and the parliamentary system. So I just wanted to give some background and try to basically lay the ground for some discussions on spiral dynamics interpretation of Turkey. I'm sure there's lots of missing things that I will have omitted, and much controversy, I'm sure. But I just wanted to, put in the labor and give it a good start. I hope it works for you all. So I'll now share the presentation that I made. And I don't know, how well versed most of you are about the history of Turkey and, where we started, how we got here. But I'm hoping that, this little tour will help us focus based on the principles that Lida mentioned, so we can reach out to our inner selves and try to see, what really emerges out of this picture, and how we can, all around the world, try to have a view of others and try to go for a sense of unity and the common solution, because at the end we do, live in this one village, and we all suffer from the maladies and also take joy from the excitements that we share. So let me just make this full screen. Okay, so this is Turkey. It has a red flag, so I named it red as well. And those versed with the spiral dynamics will know the significance. This is where we are right now. And I just wanted to give a sense of for any of those that just wanted to get a reminder, because I know that some people know it only based on, let's say, anecdote, what the spiral dynamics are, a few people that I sent it to. And I just wanted to highlight, like for us, I do like this addition to the spiral dynamics, spiral. This is the agricultural age, industrial age, and information age that Alvin Toffler actually introduced to business management. And when I look at things, I see these as, these we and I cycles happening together in these three domains so far. And most of my interpretation will actually come from that, not that I will be explicit about it. So continuing on this, let me see if I can, yeah, okay. So what I want to do is start with the history. Now, this is called a cradle of civilizations, and I don't think it's an exaggeration when it comes to Mesopotamia, the Middle East, the ancient Greek civilization. There's a strong start, let's say, from here. It is the bridge between East and West. Just yesterday with my daughter, we were in Istanbul, where, the Bosphorus just cuts through Istanbul, where on one side you have Europe and on the other side you have Asia. And that's practically what we say in Istanbul. We're saying, I'm going to Europe, I'm going to Asia. So, and also in addition, like 15, 20 years ago, I just discovered that, what we call Anatolia, which is the geographical area that Turkey is located on mostly, is comes from the Greek word literally meaning sunrise. So this is where the East starts, effectively, for the West. So the region has been influenced by fluctuations. I wanted to be particular about it. The East is Asia as we have it. The South is the Middle East. The Southwest is North Africa. West is Europe and USA, and North is Russia and the Soviet Union, which we were influenced a lot. Right from the beginning of the Republic, the Soviets actually gave a big help to the founders of Turkey. It has hosted the world's most ancient settlements. Göbekli Tepe is, as you know, 14,000 years old. Hattushash is 8,000-year-old settlement. And then we have Troy, which, everybody knows about. The prophet Abraham was born here in Urfa, in Haran. The 7 churches of the Bible are in this geography. The Lycian League was the first federative democracy, and the Lydians minted the first coin, just to give some examples. So I have some, I thought it would be nice to do this with some movies, although I need to first hide this floating controls. I believe, yes. Okay. So I took these from YouTube, and for some of them, I actually put in the credits there. These are going to go in fast pace, and some of them I will be cutting. But just to give you a sense, this is like 1500 BC. We're talking about when Moses were around, when Hammurabi came up with his code. Yeah. So this is that era, and I hope this is going to start. Okay. Sorry, the first glitch happening, I believe. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit the full screen just to try that. Yes, there we go. Okay, it's not happening, so I'm actually going to forward the.
Maybe yeah, maybe you can do it manually because yesterday
Yes.
it worked, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we look at the beginnings of it all, so we have the Hittites, the Hayasa Adzi. Hay actually in Armenian language means Armenian. Mittani is linked to the Medians. The Kurds actually claim their heritage from there. And you can see Canaan there from the Jewish history, the Palestinians. And Troy is, of course, apparent there. Phrygia, Lydia, Caria, Doria, Mysia, Lycia, the ones that I mentioned about the federative first democracy. So there was a multitude of people that were living different civilizations that in the course of history, they became stronger, bigger, like Lydia is right now. And the Medes, the Babylonians, the Persians actually conquered Anatolia for quite a while with Croesus. And you can see the Greek colonization here. Macedonia with Alexander the Great, the Seleucid Empire, Armenia, Pergamon, and Bithynia coming up. Pontus is another Greek kingdom that was in that region, in the Black Sea region. And around 99 BC, you can see that the Roman Republic was taking over. And eventually the Roman Empire actually conquered the whole area with some alliance with Armenia. And in time, it became Eastern Rome. And eventually, the Abbasids, you can see here, the Islamic ascent actually happened. So I will cut this one here and just show you the colonization of the Mediterranean, centered by the Greeks. And then you can see the Phoenician colonies here, how the Mediterranean was like a shared basin for all of these cultures, and how Anatolian and the people that lived there actually were part of it all. This is an important one. That's, you know, the Roman Empire, of course, was a vast empire. And around 395, they turned into Pars Occidentalis and the Pars Orientis. And the Eastern Roman Empire was, it was divided, and we were part of the Eastern Roman Empire. In Turkey, you might want to know, like the people, the Greeks that live in Anatolia, we call them Rum. And the Turks that lived in Anatolia, we would be calling them the Rumi Turks. And Rumi, you might remember from Mevlana Celaleddin, the poet. It's actually, he was born in Persia, but since he lived in Anatolia, he was called Rumi. And Rumi for us means actually Roman in practice. Okay, so the Rumi Turks are the Roman Turks. Yeah. So because the origins were from Central Asia. Now, if we look at here, I think now I can move into full screen. Here you can see the Turkic empires. Now, the Turks actually originated from Central Asia, and they actually landed in Anatolia starting from the 7th and 8th centuries. But the actual, the acclaimed is the 1071 entry of the Seljuks, which are here. And that's what's claimed to have, the Turks coming into Anatolia. But all of those different nations and civilizations that exist in Anatolia, actually, I would think, and many people like me, they believe in this, most humanists in Turkey believe in this, is that they still exist. I mean, we still have the Phrygian, we have the Hittite, we have the Lycian heritages combined in our haploid groups. I mean, I've had my DNA testing, and I know by fact, what my composition is. I know others. So when it comes to the strictly Turkic heritage in Anatolia, wouldn't exist more than 5 or 10%. But still, the legacy is that the ruling group was the Turks. So you would see here like the European Hun Empire. You will know it from the name Attila, who actually conquered Europe's big portion. And then we have the Göktürk Khanate, which is like the actual Turkish state, which the Turks in Turkey basically relate to. And then we have the Uyghur states. You already know them from China. They are the westmost province of China, and these are a Turkic group. Sometimes when we listen to them, we can actually understand some words in Turkish that they are using. And then we have the Karahanid Khanate, which is basically remained mostly in the Central Asian steppes. And they are part of the Kazakhstan heritage, for instance. And then we come to the Great Seljuk Empire. The Great Seljuk Empire is actually an empire that originated from the northeast of Iran, with Herat and the main provinces there, which was really flourishing with arts and philosophy and all. And as an Islamic country, as an empire, they actually swept Anatolia as well, and they were the first entry point. After that, when the Seljuks were divided, and the Genghis Khan and his Mongolian hordes actually brought down the Seljuk, the Osmanlı came, the Ottoman, and then in 1923 we have the Turkish Republic emerging. So you can see here how the Mongol Empire expanded between 1206 and 1294, and how it got divided eventually. It's a bit of a tour de force, of course, for you all, but then we have the Golden Horde, for instance, and I find this a very interesting mimetic point, where, the horde in English means a large group of people. A horde of beery rugby fans would be like a good exemplary sentence. And they are called an army or tribe of nomadic warriors, like the Tartar hordes, a small loosely knit social group typically consisting of about 5 families, it says. And it's also mentioned like a crowd that's very large and excited and often rather frightening or unpleasant. But the Golden Horde is the Altun Orda, and when you go to Kazakhstan, they would claim that they come from the Altun Orda, and Altun Ordu in Turkish. And actually, for Turkic people around the world, Ordu is the most prestigious institution. It is the organized army. And it has played that role for not only Turkish interests, also in the Islamic world, and in Egypt, still in different Arab countries, you can find reminiscence of these military device, because they have raised a lot of statesmen and military leaders. So that is something still in Turkey people take pride in. So I'm trying again to play this, but it doesn't play. So this is how the Seljukites would spread. So they reached all the way to East Roman, and here it says Rum, which means like the Roman Turks that actually remained there. So that was their geography. And eventually, of course, as any empire, it went into decline. So we're talking about 1191. And after this, what happened is like all of these Turks that remained in Anatolia, they had the Byzantine Empire now, which was the Eastern Roman Empire, renamed as the Byzantine Empire. So the Ottomans actually were the ones that were the neighbors of the Byzantine Empire. The Ottomans are named after Osman, and his son, Orhan, actually married a princess of the Byzantines. This is significant from a spiral dynamics point of view. As you would all agree, Rome was actually a big bastion of the blue color. They were like the institution was basically very firm, and the Ottomans actually learned and immersed into that kind of knowledge, know-how. And like, for instance, in Harvard history department, Cemal Kafadar, the professor there, actually says this is probably the reason that the Ottomans actually became the empire amongst all of these beyliks, which are like, basically they were tribes, organized, but they were still like, purple organizations. And when it comes to the Ottoman Empire, you can see the Ottomans here in the beginning. And actually, what happened is that in the time 1299, when it was first established, it slowly grew around the Byzantine Empire. So at this stage, already in 1451, Constantinople was surrounded by the Ottomans. It was only the city, what you can call a city-state at that point, that was yet to be conquered. And in Muhammad II, which was like quite a genius, who actually came up with some very interesting tactics to do this, took on Istanbul, and at the age of 21, he was able to conquer it. We call it, of course, the conquest of Istanbul. I know in the Western psyche, it's called the fall of Constantinople. So this is also an important part of what happens between, us and them. And the Ottoman Empire quickly became a massive empire, almost at the reach of the Romans. What happened around here is that already in the 16th century, as you can see from the date, the Americas were already, the conquest of the Americas had already happened, and the Ottoman Empire was based on, the economy was based on gold. And when there was an influx of silver, this actually created a huge inflation. And this is one of our main history professors, Halil İnancık's thesis, that actually brought the decline of the Ottoman Empire, but it took more than a century for this to actually realize. And after the 18th century, this decline started until 1801 we come. It became smaller eventually. And by 1912, there was only Saudi Arabia and the Hijaz region, together with some Balkan states. Greece had already received its independence in 1820s. And what we see there is in the First World War, in only 10 days, all of the Balkan occupied lands were actually lost. And the First World War was quite a disaster. It was an ally of Germany, Ottoman Empire, and together they lost the war. And this region that you see here in the middle of Anatolia was basically what was left of the empire. And the Istanbul region was occupied by the English. The west was occupied by the Greeks. The south was occupied by the Italians. Syria, Jordan by France, and Iraq, and the southeast of Turkey by the British. And there was also a Russian incursion in the northeast. And in that state, the actual independence war started. And by 1923, it finalized with the Turkish Republic under the leadership of Atatürk. So another thing about this culture is, like, one of my friends actually came up with this saying. As I grew up, I always heard of Turkey and the mix, the melting pot that we have as a mosaic of cultures. But he was saying, isn't it more like a Ebru painting, which I don't know if you've ever seen. It is basically water painting. It's also called marble painting, where on water there's a dye that's been spread, and these actually get intermingled with one another, still keeping their separation, but it's not as lineated as the mosaic. And I do think that this is a very nice metaphor for the melting pot of Turkey. The last 100 years showed some decline in that kind of approach, and I will be explaining that a little bit. But first, I would want to give some sense about 1923, when the Republic was actually formed, established. Kemal Atatürk was the main leader, and he's called Atatürk, which means his name was actually Mustafa Kemal. Atatürk means the father Turk, and the nation wanted to name him this, a very purple kind of attribution to him. So what happened there is there is this whole reforms that took place. So one of them was the abolition of the Sultanate, of course, the abolition of the Caliphate. Republicanism came, secularism, laicism was introduced, industrialization and westernization happened. So the Roman and the Swiss law, the controversial dress code reform from 1925, which is one of the big criticizing points about Atatürk, that this was the dress code was pushed top to bottom. And of course, the one-party rule at that time is also seen as an almost dictatorial one, but some kind of, let's say, a blessed one, where people would claim that, everybody was very happy with Atatürk's leadership, which is similar to, what Erdogan right now is actually trying to claim, albeit his followership is around maximum 55% in any of the referendums that he had. And there was this whole introduction of the Latin alphabet. So before 1928, we were still using the Ottoman script. It was pretty much like the Arab alphabet. And a Turkification of the language happened, where Arab, Iranian, Greek, most of these words were actually eradicated, but it didn't really happen. It's the intention was that, but still in popular life, everybody uses these old terms as well. And the Turkish history thesis came about, and there was a surname law. And taking the time meanwhile. So İsmet İnönü was the second president, and this one-party rule lasted until 1950. So what he did was the continuation of the Atatürk reforms, establishment of the village institutes, which is a very green, left-leaning solution to education. And all of these young people would actually be trained in the villages, both involved in agriculture and building, and meanwhile also learning the sciences and technology and languages. He also introduced the extraordinary children law, where many, let's say, gifted children were actually sent to Europe to get trained on different arts and sciences. He prevented Turkey from entering the World War II, but that's also a very controversial little story, where, like my grandfather, they used to all have the Charlie Chaplin mustache. And I think it was much more like a little bit being in hiding, trying to divert Hitler from entering Turkey at that point. But another thing that he did was to transition to the multi-party regime, which actually brought the end to the Republican Party's rule after 27 years. And in his time, rapprochement with UK and USA started when Stalin demanded some of the eastern provinces. I just took a note here saying that, when the women's rights, voting rights in 1934 happened in Turkey, France didn't have a full voting right for them, and Japan didn't have it, China didn't have it, Switzerland even in 1971 didn't apply women's voting rights until 1971 for the whole of the country, and Kuwait is like 2005, which is not too far from Turkey. So more about the politics. What the Republic brought was the establishment of the national bourgeoisie, but coming up with this was after the empire was a bit critical because the Ottoman Empire was actually a mix of Muslims and non-Muslims and many nations under it, and especially Istanbul and big cities like Izmir and Salonika, they were quite mixed populations. So non-Muslims actually constituted 20% of the population. By 1927, this was reduced to 2.5%. And nowadays, they make up less than 2 in 10,000 of the population of modern Turkey. So this gives us a trend about, what it is, like the homogeneity that has been pushed. And this we mostly, when it comes to some, critical approach to the politics, we call this like the drive of the patriarchal Muslim Sunnite Turks. So, and this is something that, especially the feminist movement is very vocal about this, and they have the whole right to say this. This is still driving the Turkish politics and the general mainstream issues. So 1915, the Armenian forced migration, as it's called in Turkey, it is, I know, generally referred as genocide in the West, Metziagan in the great evil crime in Armenian. Between 600,000 and 1.5 million lives were lost. And like the Turkish state would say, because it was of the hardships of the First World War, that enough care wasn't taken in the migration, the Armenians would claim that this was an outright genocide. And it's still a debate that has to be done, that has to continue. 1922, 1924 is the forced population exchange, where Venizelos and Ataturk, actually, they agreed that 1.5 million Greeks would be exchanged against 700,000 Muslim Turks from Greece. And this was agreed upon by two countries, and these people were forced to migrate. 1937 saw an uprising, Kurdish Alawite, in Dersim, and it is claimed that 13,000 people died and 110 soldiers. 12,000 people were forced into migration. This is still a bleeding wound in Turkey and still has to be acclaimed for. 1941, the wealth tax applied to the Jewish, Armenian, and Greek populations. This was under the time of İnönü, and this was part of the whole, the national bourgeoisie efforts. 1955 saw the 6-7 September uprisings, especially in Istanbul, against minorities. And admittedly, this is state organized because the complot, the conspiracy has now been revealed, and it's even, you can watch the movie on Netflix, etc. about this. If you want to know more, you can send me a message and I'll send you the links. And even in the 1980s, after the coup d'etat of 1980, like for instance, the Assyrians had to flee from historical settlements. I know that from 50,000 people at that point, they went down to 5,000. So we see that, even in the near past, we've had issues similar in this line of establishment of the national bourgeoisie and the homogenization of Turkey. Well, when it comes to politics, our politics actually has been very much under coups and forced resignations of the government. And this is one of the reasons, actually, that AKP was able to establish their leadership, the current government. In 1960, we had a coup, which was against the Prime Minister Adnan Menderes. What happened is, like, now after 1950, they had he basically established a one-man rule, and they in their time there was many anti-democratic involvement, and meanwhile it was like the time when a liberal economy was being established, so the Turkish bourgeoisie actually was quite supported by him. And also it was the time when, after the People's Republican Party wasn't the leader, like the ezan, the call to prayer in Turkey for 16 years was done in Turkish, which was a first in the Muslim world. For 16 years, they wanted it back to be in the Arab language, which many people didn't understand. but also they helped at that time the establishment of many Islamic associations and groups. So in 1961 there was a military coup. Interesting enough, the 1961 constitution, we can now claim it as a green constitution. I'd be happy to discuss that because it gave many rights to minority groups, to labor movements, and it brought a democratic new age, basically, which didn't last long. In 1971, we had the forced resignation of the government by the military. At that point, leftist heroes, socialist revolutionaries, Deniz Gezmiş, Yusuf Hasan, and Hüseyin İnan, were hung. And this is still mourned by our generations as well. 3 young men, because they had some ideals about Turkey, were basically hung. And in 1980, we had a disastrous coup where the military, with all its forces, took over the leadership, the country, the government. And in 1997, there's this colored picture is the Islamist Erbakan, which was like the prime minister at that point. The army dictated him that that the political Islamic threat was heavily weighing, and they basically came up with a preemptive illiberal intervention. And actually, this is probably what created the backlash that brought AKP and Erdogan to power. After this, in their term, the key points I could highlight are in 2008 was the start of the Ergenekon Balyoz trials against the top brass of the military. When in my time, since I was 15 when the 1982 coup happened. Since then, we would always be saying that there is one single political party which is the strongest and never changing, which is the Turkish military. So the Turkish military has been a very important presence since the Ottoman times. And we can basically call the Ottomans and the Turks in general as an army nation. As you can see from the Seljuk Empire, from the Ottoman Empire, how they spread, the military has always had big power. But since they were very, very Kemalist, they were very much blue, and they were very modernist, this didn't agree much with with AKP, with Erdogan, and the Gülenists, which are like another Islamic fraction that were actually in partnership with Erdogan. And what they did is they came up with some conspiracy, I can say, because after a while it was understood that there was very much false evidence, etc. But what happened is that more than 300 generals were interned, and it was a huge blow to the military. And since then, the military does not have the power for coups or interfering in politics, etc., which in general we can see as a plus. But the way it has been done is another issue of controversy. 2013 Gezi protests, you might maybe remember. I basically highlighted this in green because what happened is, like, as you can see from the pictures here on the left bottom corner, like the more trees and the less assholes was, they had this ingenious sense of humor when this was happening. I was there as well. Basically, they were trying to build a business center smack in the middle of Istanbul in Taksim Square, and where there's the Gezi Park with trees, and it's a nice little haven for all of us to have a stroll, etc. So the AKP government actually wanted to build this this commercial center, and people started protesting, and suddenly we saw people from all walks of life joining with the youth there, and it lasted like 3 to 4 weeks. But at the end, it was basically it was brutally put down, and still people are in jail because of the protests there for conspiracy against throwing down the government, etc. The same year we had the Gülenists and AKP actually parting their ways, basically. And in 1725 December, the Gülenists tried to corner AKP and Erdogan by issues about, bribes taken by ministers, etc. It was a time when people thought that, this might be going to shaking the government, but Erdogan really started becoming like this strong fist and crushed the Gülenists. And after that, in 2016, the Gülenists are claimed to have come up with a coup in July 15th. And this was where, jets were flying, and the parliament was bombed, and the actual place that all this took place was the bridge between Asia and Europe in Istanbul. And this actually turned the whole currents upside down, where all of these people, all of the Gülenists, their banks, their corporations, etc., they had a huge, system. In 150 countries, they had schools teaching people about, Turkishness and Islam. And some people claim that they had an annual turnover of $40 billion a year, which was basically taken over by AKP. After that, what you experience right now as this one-man dictatorial show started, effectively. And in 2017, they wanted to come up with the Turkish-style presidential system, and the referendum happened with 51 to 49% vote. It was accepted, and 1 year later, Erdogan went to elections, and he won again in a small margin. Nevertheless, since 2018, it's been 5 years, and we've actually come to the point where some people see a chance that, the currents might change. Yet to be seen. I put this here, this picture of the man with the pala, we call it in Turkish. This guy basically, when all of this greenness was happening, he basically emerged as a shop owner with a machete in his hands. And he actually became like a hero at that point. And I think this is a significance of what was coming next in Turkey. This is an interesting diagram I wanted to share with you, having talked a little bit about the Turkish politics. As I said, until 1950, CHP, the Republican People's Party, was the main party. There were some attempts to have opposition parties at that point, but that didn't really come to fruition until 1950. And the Democratic Party actually took the lead. After 1960, it became the Justice Party. The Justice Party became the Motherland Party. Like the right wing was basically, let's say, taking other names and with some slight differences. And then there was the Truth Path Party that also came from Justice Party. But what happened is, like in the beginning of the 2000s, there was an election where, after a huge economic crisis, AKP, the Justice and Development Party of Erdogan, took the lead, and since 20 years has been in power, more than 20 years. What is interesting here is that the People's Republican Party, as you can see in the 2000s, never got more than 26-30% of the vote. There was a Democratic Left Party, which actually right now is a very small party. And HDP is an interesting new addition in the last 20 years. This is actually the Kurdish party, but with them claiming, especially as you can see, when they have a bigger base around 2015 in those elections, they said, they don't want to be seen as a Kurdish party, but they want to be seen as a nation's party, as a party for everybody in Turkey. And it has quite a good popularity right now, never going less than 12-13%. So currently, as we look at it, the main parties here is that we have the Kurdish party, we have CHP, and then we have İYİ Party, which is an offspring from the Nationalist Party here, the MHP. These are like the far right, and a more centralist party actually split from those. And what happened is that with the split, the coalition of the Nationalists and the AKP has become a bit more smaller, weakened. And now with the coalition, that's what they're trying to do, overthrow the current presidency. Now, when it comes to the politics in Turkey, I want to emphasize what I think is the case where our parties, as you can see, I'm talking about the Kurds, there's the Islamists, there's the ultra-nationalists, there are the modernists, Western-minded. In Quora, I came up with this map, which is, I find it quite fun. They were discussing whether Turkey geographically is the center of the world, but for most of the Turks here, I can probably say many of them would say yes. This is a map where it shows some problematic relationships with red, lukewarm relations in orange, generally neutral yellow, and good relations in green. So when it comes to the spheres of influence and how we co-evolve in this ecology, I think this might give a little bit of sense. We can of course discuss what this is. I think this is from 2 or 3 years ago. Now, I hope it's all going well and you can follow. I'm hoping it's not boring. The founding tenets of the Republic I wanted to talk about. In his book, Tunnel Bora Political Streams, he basically talks about the mainstreams that we've had as the late Ottoman mentality, Occidentalism, Kemalism, nationalism, Turkism, and idealism. This idealism here in Turkism is called ülkücülük, which is a Turkish ideal or Turkic idealism, we can call it, very nationalist taste. Conservatism, Islamism, liberalism, left, feminism, and the Kurdish political movement. So these still are key to how politics is interpreted in Turkey. And another thing about the Republican People's Party is, from the beginning, the 6 arrows was the key to its ideology. So these would be republicanism, populism, nationalism, laicism, statism, and revolutionism. And this has lost popularity a lot, but chances are right now this rhetoric might be coming back, because a mix of republicanism and populism actually points to democracy right now. This nationalism is according to Atatürk and the founders of the Republic, their nationalism is defined as anybody that calls themselves a citizen of Turkey is a Turk. This does create a controversy, for instance, for the Kurds. They're saying we don't want to be called Turks, but it's a matter of the definition here, and this is a very long debate that has been going on. But more and more people are coming to terms with this, and right now the Kurds and this party, the Republican Party, are actually in coalition right now in this election. So laicism is this whole debate against the political Islam, and that they shouldn't be ruling everyday life. Statism is the state intervention. What happened with the AKP rule is that a huge privatization has happened, notwithstanding, the educational system, the health system has been privatized. The judiciary system in the 2010 referendum was actually put under the Ministry of Justice. So in 2010, we lost the separation of powers in Turkey, and the military was also defanged, let's say, and the army is now under the control of the Ministry of Defense, which used to be an independent body. So other recent trends that were utilized by AKP, most of us here from Turkey would remember, like the Mehmet and Altan brothers, two intellectuals, and quite another group of people called the liberal left. They were talking about the Second Republic, which meant, just like the French, that we would be actually going through times of the Republic, and then there would be a monarchy, and then there would be another republic, that the Republic that we were living in needed to go, and a new Republic had to come. And lo and behold, this is actually what is right now happening. Basically, Erdogan actually ended the first regime and now came up with a one-man rule, and the opposition parties are now going for a new system change, bring the regime back to what they call an empowered parliamentary system. Etienne Mahçupyan, for instance, another key person. I'm mentioning him because of the grid model, that he actually was a tutor, and he would be giving trainings in this field. he basically applied the grid model to politics with its the 9 quadrants that it has, with the focus on people versus productivity. And actually, he did influence the AKP elite in his articles in that kind of direction. And then there's this Ahmet Shishman, who's like an ideologue of AKP and the president of the Ensar Foundation, which is a notorious foundation for most opposition. I wanted to highlight the colors, and we can discuss this as well, whether we agree or not. But in their context, you can see that mostly it was a purple, a bit of red and blue system, and now it has become an official values training in the schools, especially in the primary schools and the secondary schools. And here there is a set of memes that were used by especially Erdogan and the elite of AKP, which I will not go over one by one, but I wanted to just keep it here, and another point of discussion if the time comes. Now, when it comes to the influences on Turkish politics, one influence is the Middle East. So this is Islam. It is the how would you call it, like the Ottoman Empire was actually presiding over the Balkans and around the Black Sea Basin, etc. So there were many Christian nations that were under the Christian ethnicity and Christian believers, and others like the Jews, especially after Spain, etc. But the main tenet was adherence to Islam. Some of you might have seen in the Facebook groups where Said Davlabani actually gave a little story, a background of the Islamic Renaissance. Here it is, I like the way he says the degree of meme activation. It is true that in the Middle Ages, Islam did go through how would you call it, like a golden age. But one thing that is important to take from here is that the purple, red, and blue essence in Islam, in these geographies, is really a great strong force. I would want to say that until 1980s, 2000s, Turkey was different than this. The blue was bigger, the red was less, and there was much more orange and some green after 1960s. But more or less, this is the influence that comes from the Middle East. Then there is, when it comes to the nationalist parties and the nationalists in Turkey, I mentioned before that the Turks claim that they came to Anatolia from Central Asia, which you can see with, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and this blue flag here, which is the Xinjiang in China. And of course, the Asian steppes, the Siberia, these are claimed to be the Turkish land. And there are people in Turkey that actually dream of the unity of the Turkic peoples of the world under the Turan, which is the name of the stream, to get together. And this is the wolf, Asina, that supposedly led the Turks out of dire situations in Central Asia. And she is like the she-wolf that is the mother of the Turkish nation. Going to mention about the influences, Europe. Now, this is like a sore point. Since the 50s and 60s, Turkey has been part of the economic sphere of EU and has had some good times about, accession to EU. But especially after the first years of Erdogan, he was very pro-European, and that's how we actually got part of the boat. Eventually, this didn't take place. And after the coup of 2016, things became worse because of the one-man rule, and I can understand that EU doesn't want to have anything to do with it. But this is something that is unfortunately something that maybe causes part of the problems for us and for Europe as well. I would have better seen Turkey as part of EU. Of course, then EU would have its neighborhood with Iraq and Syria and Iran and all, but this is what it is. This is what the world is all about. So I was like, I'm hoping that, we can have a discussion about this. After the clash of civilizations of 9/11, an alliance of civilization came up between Spain and Turkey. But funny enough, the Gülen movement, the Gülenists that I mentioned, and the Opus Dei in Spain were the people that were actually organizing these groups, which was quite acclaimed in Turkey. Recently, we've had the issue with the Istanbul Agreement about women's rights. What happened is that we got Hungary and Poland and Turkey influencing this, and they wanted to emphasize family protection versus the women's rights, and they withdrew. So we can also see from here that there are certain nations in Europe as well that have some are on the same side with Erdogan in many ways. So coming to the USA, just checking the time. Yep, the special relationship, the strategic ally, as we have all been, but there's some issues about NATO being an alliance for democracies, whether they would want to keep Turkey in the flock. Turkey purchased S-400 missiles, and that is a big issue because it was received from Russia and is part of the Shanghai Five. As much as the State Department of the U.S. says that Turkey is like a representative almost for the Western world in the Shanghai Five, it is still a threat because the Asian alliance there is something that has to be dealt with. The Syria, Libya, the Kurds, and the containment of Russia is critical points for NATO. And recently, we've had the Sweden and Finland NATO inclusion discussions, which has become like a sore point. And of course, Erdogan actually gave the sign for Finland already before the elections to get some legitimacy from the West. When it comes to Putin and Erdogan, I'm just going to speed up a little bit because I want to talk about the elections coming in. But this is like the picture as we see it, these Erdogan and Putin and Orban, Kaczynski and Trump at that time, eating up democracy. And one of the things that, we discuss frequently with is like, I basically think that the green needs to be reinvented. It's because green hasn't really emerged in its most healthy version. What we're seeing is like, we're getting arrested at that point and then falling back. And this has to be reinvented. And for that, I think there might be some use of some control over free flow individualism, and also have some more ethically based, almost algorithmic decisions that we need to have that should bring some control over it. But this is my personal view. We can have that in the discussion. This is an interesting thing, talking about the spheres of influence. It's quite recent, in a few years, there's this group called Sadat, which, the opposition leader actually went to their doors and said, we know what you're doing and we're going to, we're keeping an eye on you. They have this plan of Africa, and we know that, Erdogan and his cronies, many of them are investing in Africa. More and more relations in Africa are happening, and this Asian African Islamic Union is what they're going after. And this is something to keep an eye on. And this Sadat is pretty much like the organization that Eric Prince had in the Iraqi invasion. Like they had different names like XZ and Blackwater. He was a strong, influential guy, and he was the brother of Betsy DeVos, the former Secretary of Education, U.S. under Trump. And so these are like private armies that we are dealing with. And if we talk about being a little bit paranoid, like after the elections, if something goes wrong, we are worried that these guys might trigger a civil war. So quick statistics about Turkey. The current account balance is in the red. The blue is Turkey. I have Netherlands, Russia, Hungary, and Poland here amongst the illiberal democracies, and Netherlands as an example of the West. The exports really did increase in the times of Erdogan. Kudos to them. There are certain things that really happened. Some might claim it would have happened anyways, but nevertheless, this is what we see. External debt increased in the last years. The inflation here, you can see that when they came to power, there was a huge inflation in that economic crisis. It was brought down, and this is going up till 2000. Now we know that this has really emerged back to the 60%. The rate of change of the GDP, I'll pass that. One thing, unemployment rate here is slowly increasing in the last year, in the few years. Now, when it comes to the regulatory quality index, I think this is quite key, and this might be deterministic of the elections. You can see here that around 2016, when the shift happened in the rule of Erdogan, regulatory quality decreased. Rule of law index went down into minus. Control of corruption went down, and government effectiveness also went down. There are definitions of these under there, and this basically shows how the blue has been disrupted. Now, in the last 10 minutes, I have 10 minutes, right, Lida?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So now about the elections, what we have is 4 candidates that emerged in the last couple of weeks. Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu is the main opposition. I put the colors as I see it, and check from some resources like ChatGPT, for instance. You might want to give it a try. It also has its own views about it. So at first, I put the green, blue, and orange for Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu himself, not the party, and then I decided on adding this little yellow here because what he did in the last 3 years. He went out of his way of, basically shifting the situation. He is the one that came up with the alliance of 6 different parties, where the Republican People's Party is the only leftist party, and the others are coming from Islamic roots. And while doing this, he also got the support from the Kurdish party as well, and the leftist alliance. So what he did was like come up with an umbrella kind of attraction point. And Erdogan, actually, this would have been different if we talked about him 20 years ago, but it's, full red, quite a big orange, and the purple roots coming from the Islamic approach. Sinan Oğan, on the other hand, the Victory Party, his purple is coming from the Turkic roots. He's much more of a far-right nationalist. And red, Muharrem İnce actually comes from the People's Republicans Party. And for that, he has his green, but right now his whole tendency is red. He's pretty much mimicking the discourse of Erdogan and the same kind of attitude. And he's there just to prove, that he has his own vote, and the youth actually depends on him. They are actually supporting him. What happened is that in this coalition of CHP, Muharrem İnce is a threat to that coalition because it might take the votes from the leftists, and Sinan Oğan is taking it from the moderate nationalists. So we are waiting to see if these two weren't out there, the chances that this coalition, Kılıçdaroğlu, would win. These are the parties that are there. I just wanted to give a sense of, as I see it, what the colors are. There's a nation alliance of 6 parties here. Erdogan's President Alliance, the Father Alliance, which is a small alliance. I don't think they will get more than 2%, 3%. And then there's a Labor and Freedom Alliance, which has quite a chance because HDP normally has at least 10 to 13% vote. And TIP is now an emerging one, which is the Turkish Labor Party, which has its roots from the 60s, but is redefined right now. And they would probably get like 3%, and the rest are basically supporting them with some small percentages. Currently, as we see it, is that the National Alliance would actually be getting 58-60% of the vote. So in one sense, it's like a given that this alliance will win together with the support from the Labor and Freedom Alliance. But because of this situation here with Muharrem İnce and Sinan Oğan, if the presidential election doesn't end up in the first tour, in the first round, in the second round, Erdogan might have more influence because of stability, etc. So this is the situation in the elections that is coming up, and in general, the opposition thinks they will win, but everybody is worried about the cards up Erdogan's sleeve, because he hasn't actually practically lost the elections, and they have a huge machine. They have the media control and the electoral system. They've actually tried to swing it towards their end, and we are worried that especially after the earthquake, at least 10 million of the votes are there, and this is going to be an issue of how that voting is going to take place there in a secure fashion. So everybody is mobilized right now to make sure that we are guarding the ballots and that all of the ballots are taken into the offices under surveillance so that they won't be stolen, etc. So in every election we have these issues. So we're going to see how that happens. Again, we can discuss that. So yes, I'm looking forward to our fruitful discussions now. I think I've done it in -5 minutes.
Well done, Hamza. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Hey.
Thank you for your
Great.
patience.
Thank you very much, Hamza. And there's a lot covered there. So, and thank you for, taking us on such a tour through Turkish history and also the spheres of influences. Any questions, anybody?
Can you hello, my name is Neri. I'm from Israel. Can you talk a little more about the green levels of Turkey? Because from your description, it seems like they are less than what I expected. So can you describe the green ideas in Turkey today and her strengths, their strengths?
Yes.
I'm hoping clear.
Actually, if you had a chance to follow the Gezi movement in 2013, this was like a shining point. It was we could see like a multitude of groups getting together around real green ideals of what we experienced there was like people would gather there. They would have their demonstrations, they would be holding the guard of the parks, etc. And then if you went there early in the morning, you would see people that woke up and they were cleaning the mess. It was like, and it was all about protecting trees. It was all about protecting the air that we breathe in such a cosmopolitan city. And even what you would claim as some nationalist youth from the Republican Party, together with some Kurds, which actually in the beginning they were a little bit hesitant to join. Feminists were there, the LGBT were there. It was like and the leftist Islamists, etc. It was quite a feast actually. And at that point we were saying, wow, it's like a relief from depression. It was like an euphoria that we had. When it comes to the green force, well, it is true that we have quite a vibrant youth, and the music in that sense exists. The old guard left has become more smooth. They're much more open to certain discussions. There's a huge new age movement happening. It's like almost annoying for me, but it's it's part of the whole green thing that's taking place. And very strong feminist movement, I believe, as a potential. It has a very strong presence. The LGBT, despite what we're going through, they are very firm. And of course, HDP, the Kurdish party, they are, everybody would agree that they are one of the most firmly politicized, and where women's rights is well recognized. Some people might say, well, it's recognized because each of them are, a potential soldier for the Kurdish movement. But nevertheless, it's that kind of equality actually is there. So and then there is this whole intellectual sphere. I think the internet, of course, has both with the post-truth, meanwhile allowing people to flourish. I mean, we've seen things like despite what they're coming to power in 1920 in the 2000s, Like 10 years later, we started hearing that in the Imam Hatip schools, we call them, where religious education is given. They did a study and they saw that 50% of them were deists. They weren't atheists, but they were deists, etc. So there's like an opening happening, but
there are
meanwhile,
signs.
hardships. Yeah, there are signs. There are signs. I've been to Azerbaijan and I've been to Kazakhstan. It's recently, and like when I go there, I don't see, like Reza is here from Azerbaijan. It was very hard to see the green presence in these countries.
Yeah,
but he has had that kind of time in the 60s and 70s, I guess. We had the 1968 movement, just like Europe. So there is some hope. There is hope.
if I can add two questions from my interest, do you see any green in Erdogan? This is one question in this sphere. And the other question is the layer of the orange, because from my perspective, I expected Turkey to be more orange, but the way they deal with their interest rate, it seems they are not very orange. There's something strange there. So my question is the green in Erdogan and the orange layer, if you can describe it.
Of course. For me, it's pretty clear. I do believe that Islam is a communitarian religion. It is, in its heart, it is about, giving rather than taking in many ways. And when it comes to the rhetoric, Erdogan can easily talk about this. But what we see is in practice, his green is more in-group green, which takes us more to purple. And it is about, their people, when they're together, they are green amongst themselves. But when it comes to anybody that doesn't believe in Islam or is in opposition to their beliefs or their ways of politics, they are never green. Of course, they bite and they're red. Yeah. So, but other than that, when he comes, he's like, right now, I just saw some posters of him. He again had this, white shirt, opened his one, and he puts his hand on the heart, which, this is what really people, see him as, his followers.
But he's also a fatherly figure. Like he's trying to be a father.
Yes, yes.
And the orange.
The orange is like, actually, in the beginning, we were thinking that he was going to just continue with what Anavatan Party, the Motherland Party, was going to do, because Turgut Özal was the leader and his brother was Korkut Özal, who was much more of an Islamist, who was the founder also of AKP. And they came in with the procession, with the promises of accession to EU and making Turkey the 10th biggest economical power in the world, which never happened.
But it has the potential. It has the potential. It's sitting very well in that terms. So,
see, for me, what I see is like the AKP government actually pressed down on the potential of Turkey. Turkey has, Turkey was like a Warsaw Pact state until the 80s, pretty much. So it had a huge potential. But what happened is that they basically turned it around for themselves. So it wasn't really like a responsible kind of situation. I mean, some people call Erdogan like the 10% Erdogan, like, whenever there's a international discussion going on or a company comes here, he's basically, okay, this is for Turkey and 10% goes to our cause. So, that's his orange. But I would have wanted to show more of the statistics. I mean, he has done, good things. Of course, we've seen progress in Turkish economy as well in many ways.
Good.
Yeah, it's limited.
Thank you.
Okay, sure. Thanks. So if you have a question, please put up your hand so we can do them in order. Wiebe?
Yes, there are two already.
Yeah, Wiebe, please. You have to unmute yourself, Wiebe.
Thank you very much, Hamza, for your presentation. Very interesting. I had one question for clarification. At the last part of your presentation, you said the Turkish elections are going in 2 rounds, and there's a possibility that Erdogan will win it in the 2nd round. Can you clarify a little bit that part so I can understand it?
It would be in the first round, who gets the 50+1 wins.
Okay.
If they don't, and if this is going to be because of the two other contenders, this is going to give a sense that, see, they're divided, against us. They still have, different people barging in. And we are also worried that in the first round, the parliamentary elections is going to also take place. And if a configuration comes out that AKP is the first party there, they're going to say, see, we are the first party in the parliament. So even if the president comes as from the opposition, we will be able to block them as we wish. So it's better that you just vote to Erdogan and we have stability, so to say.
Okay. And okay. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Right. Anita, please.
Hello, Hamza. Thanks for your presentation. It was a lot to take in, but
I know.
very, very informative. So thank you very much. I have a clarification question about the chart that you put up, which had all the political parties shown up from in several years, and they had colors. Like there was a lot of red. There was the Kurdish party had a green color, and there was a blue. Do these color correspond with the spiral dynamics colors or not?
No, this is just a resource that I took, so they don't. But in a sense, no, it wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, the People's Republican Party is much more of an establishment party historically, and we've been looking forward to it become a social democratic party, which really didn't happen in practice yet. Right now, there are some inklings about it. And the HDP, the Kurdish party, yes, I do see it as a green party because it's also, very inclusive in many ways. But my personal criticism, and many people have that same kind of thing as well, is that they are too still aligned with the PKK, the terrorist group, or they're freedom fighters, according to them. Yeah. So they want to keep their military arm. So in that sense, it's
Yeah. So a follow-up question for you then, to clarify for me a little, like in Orange, democracy started to take shape, right? So we could say that people with their point of gravity in Orange and Green, kind of in their bone marrow, understand democracy. They can handle, like, I will fight to the core that even if I don't agree with you, you have the right to express your opinion, right? Yeah. So there's different. And we can see that a democracy began to emerge in an industrial economy. So that basic needs were met, people feel more secure that their basic needs are being met, and it's easier to grant other people the same rights as they have, et cetera, et cetera. And we can also see that people with the point of gravity in blue, they will support conventions, and when the conventions are a fetal state, they will support that. And if the conventions are you're being a good citizen by going to vote, they will support that. So can you say something? Do you have any idea how these blue, orange, green, how that is divided, how that is compounded in Turkey? Well, do you understand my question?
Yes, I hope so. What I can say is, like, if we take it back to the Ottoman times, there are certain things like the inflation that I mentioned about the silver influx into the empire. There were other issues, like, with the rise of Reformation in Europe, and what you can call the Weberian, economic resistance. Was actually not really taken seriously in the Ottoman Empire. Like some issues that we had was, like, when the printing press started rolling in Europe, the Ottomans actually didn't want anything about it. They just thought it as a satanic, device, just as what happened in late 19th century with the telegram. Like actually the sultans were people that, people would be flocking towards and saying like, you got the money, you got this, Europeans would be coming and trying to influence them, and they didn't go into this. So technology wasn't, apart from military technology, most, social technologies, etc., weren't taken seriously. Industry actually really kicked in after the Republic. So this started like, the first 10 years, so a great leap in that sense. And, rule of law, establishment of the blue, and Atatürk was keen on, we just had this the economy convention in Izmir after 100 years. So he was the one that actually came out of the economic conference in Izmir at that point where I live. And he also had some ideas, green ideas, like he would be devising industrial complexes with schools and, having childcare and people living close to these, their factories in green fields, greenhouses and stuff like that, basically keeping it all green. And this didn't really come to fruition, but one of the reasons is the Second World War, of course. And after 1950s, we were very much influenced by the US Truman Doctrine, and the Marshall Plan came with certain restrictions about, how economics should be run. And this, created a pretty much an orange without a fully established blue. And eventually, I think what happened is, like with Erdogan taking advantage of this, bringing down the judicial system, the army, etc., privatization of education and healthcare. They basically deinstitutionalized Turkey, which is also, I think, linked to, the whole Thatcher, Reagan, Washington consensus, neoliberal doctrines. Turkey became very much under those influences. And now it's lost its blue core. And that's why orange right now cannot flourish. Yeah. So this is one of the reasons that, not knowing spiral dynamics well, this is what the opposition coalition alliance is trying to push right now, saying, we need to have rule of law, we need to have justice, we need to have, equal trade. And people like Daran Hocamoglu, who's like an economist in MIT, he wrote a book, and in that book about Turkey, he was saying, if you don't have democracy, you're not going to have your economy going. This is the belief of the Turkish left and opposition right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I pronounce your name right, Ugur.
Yes, sir. It's Uğur.
Good. Please.
Okay. First of all, Mr. Zeytinoglu, thank you very much for your presentation. I am also a political scientist, candidate, I would say. I'm doing my doctorate in the University of Münster in Germany. And although I'm from Turkey, I quite benefited from your presentation that you came through the ancient civilization also. Giving a little background about our country and stuff. But sir, there's a point of issue that I have been trying to understand for a quite long time, that I actually have been observing some sort of transition in the discourses of Erdogan government in Turkey after the military coup attempt. What we have been observing that the main reference of the Erdogan's discourses was the political Islamist discourse, of course. It's some sort of the victimized politics, the victimhood coming from the military coup background or the Kemalist dictatorship, so-called. But after the military coup attempt on the 15th of July 2016, I personally observed some sort of the revitalization of the Turkish Islamic synthesis, which means maybe it's because of the rapprochement of the MHP, it's some sort of new coalition, giving more emphasis on the Turkic symbols, giving more emphasis on the Turkish history. So is it possible to define this new discourse as the past efforts like the Turkish Islamic synthesis, or is it some sort of a new pragmatist populist formation?
The way that I
would just a housekeeping thing, Hamza, in interest of time. We've got about 2 or 3 minutes left in this section, so if you can take that into account with answering, thank you.
Sure. I think maybe it might be, you know, I mean, we know about Erdogan and we know about the Gülenist movement, etc. in Turkey. The main difference was in this 2016 coup was Erdogan represents the Islamic civilization ideal. The cause is that it's about, you know, uniting the Muslims and making this like, and Turkey being the leader in this role, and him being the leader, and hopefully he would think that he would become the caliphate. He would be the caliph of Islam. But Gülen, on the other hand, was much more about the alliance of civilizations, as I mentioned in the presentation as well. Gülen went and visited the Pope. He was a close ally with Israel, and he always said that the Turkish state was non-negotiable, and we have a national core, etc. So after 2016, when Gülen was basically defanged in Turkey, and the threat that came at that point, I think this was Erdogan's attempt to unite both the national and the Islamic front, and try to create a base where whenever there is a conflict, whenever Turkey has to go into any kind of military conflict, etc., that he could easily unite even the opposition. And this is actually something that he really, you know, he was nurtured by this. Many people would be like, if it's a war, we have to stand by Erdogan. Currently, after the economic crisis, that doesn't exist anymore. I know this doesn't exactly respond to your question. I think it's an issue of debate, but this would be much more like my starting point about this. It's much more about also the alliance with the ultra-nationalist party, with the Milliyetçi Hareket Partisi, so with their base. So I think it was a tactic in that sense. You know, he never used to praise Atatürk before, but now, you know, Atatürk is our father again.